My name is Emily. When I was 11, my mother left the country with her boyfriend and left me behind with $2 and a locked door. People still ask how that happened. Listen, and if you've lived through something like this, share your story in the comments. Rebecca was still on the phone when I dropped my backpack by the door. Shoes stayed on. That usually meant she was in a hurry. The suitcase stood upright by the couch, zipper strained, one wheel wobbling like it had been dragged too far already. "Don't forget to lock up," she said into the phone, then glanced at me. "Hey, you're home." She kept talking while opening the hallway closet, checking something, checking nothing. The ride notification chimed. Her voice softened in that way it only did for people who weren't me. I waited until she hung up. "How long?" She didn't answer right away. A wallet came out, then 2 bills. She placed them on the table and slid them closer with one finger. "It's a short trip," she said. "I'll be back soon." "Soon when?" A shrug. The jacket was already on. "You're old enough. Don't make this weird." The door opened. Cold air followed her in. The neighbor across the street waved. Rebecca lifted her hand without stopping. "Don't tell anyone," she said, "and don't open the door for anyone either." Then she was gone. The door shut. The lock clicked from the outside. The phone rang once when I tried calling her back. Straight to voicemail. I called again. Same result. A text went through. No reply. The kitchen light hummed. The refrigerator gave up a sour smell and not much else. Milk past its date. Mustard. A jar of pickles. The freezer held 1 tray of ice and a box with nothing in it. The pantry had cans with dusty tops. I turned one around. The year printed on it was wrong in a way I didn't understand yet, just knew I shouldn't eat it. The calendar on the wall was still turned to last month. No circle, no note. No arrow pointing to a day that meant something. Back in the living room, the $2 waited. I counted it twice, like maybe it would change. At school, that wouldn't cover lunch, not even the small one. The house felt larger without her moving through it, every sound carrying farther than it should. I turned the television on for noise, then off again when a warning about unpaid service flashed across the screen and stayed there for a second longer than usual. Outside, a car door slammed. I looked through the front window and saw the taillights at the curb. As the trunk closed, a red light flicked on across the way, then off. Mrs. Johnson's porch had a new box under the eaves. She liked gadgets. Everyone knew that. My phone buzzed. A photo loaded slowly. Rebecca and a man I hadn't met, smiling too close together, airport glass behind them. The doorbell rang. I stood there, money in my hand, phone buzzing again, and reached for the lock. My fingers stopped. The words came back exactly as she'd said them. "Don't open the door for anyone." The next morning started the same way it always had. Backpack on, shoes tied, door locked. Nothing about leaving the house felt different, which made it easier to pretend nothing was wrong. At school, the routine carried me through the halls without questions. Teachers nodded. No one asked why my mother hadn't walked me halfway down the block like she sometimes did. Lunch was the first problem. The line moved fast, trays sliding forward, numbers called out. When my turn came, I handed over my card and waited for the beep that didn't happen. The cashier looked at the screen. It didn't go through. "I don't have it," I said. She waited. "The card," she clarified. "It's at home." Her eyes lifted to my face, then back to the register. "You'll need a note." I nodded like that made sense and stepped aside. A lunch aide pointed toward the office. The secretary listened with her head tilted, fingers already on the keyboard. "We just need a form signed by your parent," she said. "She's out of town," I answered. "Oh, that's fine," the secretary replied. "Just have her email us." I went back to class, hungry and relieved. Out of town sounded temporary, acceptable. It fit the story better than the truth. That afternoon, the pantry offered fewer choices. One can opened with a hiss that felt louder than it should have. Half of it went back on the shelf for later. The $2 stayed on the table, flattened by my palm whenever I walked past, as if pressing it might stretch it further. My phone lit up after homework. Rebecca's name appeared with a photo underneath it. She was standing in front of something old and tall, smiling with a man whose arm rested easily around her shoulder. The caption read, "Much needed break." Comments stacked underneath. Heart emojis. Someone wrote, "Enjoy every minute." Another asked when she'd be back. There was no answer. The porch light clicked on that evening. When the door opened, a paper bag sat on the mat. No knock, no footsteps lingering, just a bag and a folded napkin on top. Eat. That was all it said. The bag held bread, peanut butter, and apples. Everything fresh, everything normal. The kind of food that meant someone had thought about it more than once. The next day, Mrs. Johnson waved from across the street while watering her plants. "Your mom traveling?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "Good for her," she replied. "Everyone needs time away." Later, while taking out trash, she spoke again, quieter this time. "Her car left early the other day." "Yes?" "I keep an eye on things," she said. "Nothing strange, everything worked fine." I nodded without knowing what she meant, and she didn't explain. By the end of the week, school staff started noticing patterns. Lunch money still missing. Papers unsigned. The counselor asked if everything was okay at home. "She's away," I said again. The answer kept working. Adults heard what they wanted to hear and moved on. Systems did the same. No alarms went off for a kid who showed up on time and stayed quiet. On Saturday, a car stopped in front of the house mid-morning. A woman stepped out with a clipboard and a practiced smile. "Just a routine check," she called through the door. The bathroom fan covered my breathing while shoes paused outside. The clipboard tapped once against the door frame. Then footsteps moved away. A flyer slid under the door before the engine started. "If you need help, call." I picked it up and read the number twice. The message showed up while I was sitting on the floor with the calendar spread open, counting squares again, even though the circle was already there. My phone buzzed once, then stopped. Rebecca's name appeared, but it wasn't for me. The screen had opened to a thread I wasn't supposed to see. A preview line sat there longer than it should have. "She'll be fine on her own." The words stayed put when I tapped them. No disappearing, no correction. Just that sentence, sent days earlier, followed by a heart emoji from someone saved as Mark. Scrolling felt wrong and necessary at the same time. The date matched the morning she left. The timestamp landed before my backpack hit the floor that day. That part mattered, even if I didn't know why yet. A call came through before I could lock the phone again. "Hey," Rebecca said, voice bright and practiced. "Where have you been?" "At home." A pause, brief, but there. "That's not what Mrs. Johnson said." "She asked," I replied. "Well, she called me," Rebecca said. "She said you weren't answering the door. I told her you probably ran off to a friend's." My mouth opened, then closed. "You shouldn't do that," she continued. "You worry people. Don't make this bigger than it is." "I didn't go anywhere." "Emily," she said, sighing into the phone, "I can't manage this from overseas. You need to help me out here." The line went dead before there was anything to answer. Across the street, Mrs. Johnson leaned against her porch railing, phone still in her hand. She waved me over with 2 fingers. "Your mom said you weren't staying put," she said. "That true?" "No." "She sounded upset," Mrs. Johnson replied. "Asked if you'd been difficult lately." The word sat between us. Difficult. Like a stain that spread if you didn't wipe it up fast enough. "She said you ran off," Mrs. Johnson added. I shook my head. She studied my face longer than people usually did. "If something's wrong, I can call someone." "I'm fine." "I mean the police," she said. "They can sort things out." "No," I said too quickly. Mrs. Johnson didn't argue. She nodded once, slow. "All right," she said. "Door's open if you change your mind." Back in the house, the peanut butter jar lay on its side in the trash. The phone book sat under it, pages torn where I'd looked up numbers I couldn't use. The flyer from the door slid back into view when the trash shifted. "If you need help, call." The landline was still dead. The phone in my hand had 10% left. The number on the flyer matched one I'd heard at school assemblies, spoken in calm voices that promised safety and order. The call connected after 3 rings. "Thank you for calling," the recorded voice said. "Your call is important to us." A pause followed, then music, tinny and cheerful. The volume dropped, came back, dropped again. The phone warmed against my palm. My thumb hovered over the screen, ready to end it. "Please stay on the line," the voice returned. "All representatives are currently assisting other callers." The battery warning flashed. 1%. The call ended on its own. At school the next day, the counselor pulled me aside again. "Your mom reached out," she said. "She mentioned you've been staying out late." "I go home." "Right," the counselor replied, nodding without looking convinced. "She said it's been a stressful week for her." The story had moved faster than I had. It fit better than the truth. A mother traveling, a child acting out. Adults recognized those shapes and slid everything else into place around them. That afternoon, Mrs. Johnson set a bag on the porch again. This one was heavier, a carton of eggs, soup, bread. "Eat," the note said, same as before. She stood at the end of the driveway this time. "I can still call," she said quietly. "No," I repeated. Her mouth tightened, but she stepped back. "Then I'll keep watching," she replied. "That part I can do." Trash pickup came early that week. The sound of bins scraping along pavement pulled me toward the door before I thought about it. The bag by the counter was light enough to lift with one hand. What was left inside it didn't matter anymore. Shoes went on without tying. The calendar stayed on the table, the notebook beside it. The door opened and the air hit harder than expected. Halfway down the driveway, the bag slipped from my fingers and split when it landed. Everything tilted after that. A voice cut through the blur. Someone saying my name, or maybe asking it. The next thing I remember clearly was the ground pressing against my shoulder and hands gripping my arms to turn me over. "Stay with me," a man said. "Can you hear me?" I tried to answer and didn't. When my eyes opened again, the ceiling above me wasn't familiar. A light buzzed. A woman leaned over, adjusting something at my wrist. "You're awake," she said. "That's good." A police officer stood near the door, notebook open. "Can you tell me your name?" "Emily." "And where's your mom?" "She's traveling." The officer looked at the woman, then back at me. "How long has she been gone?" I didn't answer. The woman checked my blood pressure again, slower this time. A second officer stepped in, older, with a softer voice. "We spoke to your neighbor," he said. She was worried. Mrs. Johnson stood in the hallway, arms crossed tight against her chest. Her mouth pressed into a line when she saw me looking at her. "I told them," she said. "I told them everything I knew." They moved me later that morning. Forms were signed, questions repeated. A folder appeared with my name on it, thick enough to feel heavy when someone set it down. The word abandonment came up for the first time, while a woman with a badge clipped to her jacket spoke into her phone. "Yes," she said. "Yes, child. 11. Rebecca arrived that afternoon. Her hair was pulled back tight, makeup perfect in a way that didn't match the circles under her eyes. She moved fast, arms out, voice raised just enough for everyone to hear. "There you are," she said. "I've been looking everywhere." An officer stepped between us. "She ran away," Rebecca explained. "I told people. I tried to handle it from abroad, but she's been acting out for months." "That's not—" Rebecca shook her head, tears appearing on cue. "She doesn't understand boundaries," she said. "I went away for work. She panicked." The woman with the badge wrote without looking up. Mrs. Johnson spoke from the doorway. "She didn't run." Rebecca turned. "You don't know my child." "I know what I saw," Mrs. Johnson replied. "I know when you left." The room shifted. The officer asked for details. Mrs. Johnson described the suitcase, the ride, the timing. Her words landed differently than mine had. Slower, heavier. The badge woman asked for proof. Mrs. Johnson nodded. "I have it." Later, someone took my notebook from the table where I'd set it. Gloved hands flipped through the pages. Dates, counts, short lines written smaller as the days went on. Rebecca watched from across the room, arms folded now, jaw tight. "That's not evidence," she said. "She's imaginative." The badge woman didn't respond. She added the notebook to the folder. Another device came out. Mrs. Johnson's voice stayed steady as she explained how it worked, how long it had been there. The screen showed Rebecca stepping off the porch with her suitcase, the same morning she'd said she was only stepping out for a bit. Rebecca looked at the floor. "I told her I'd be back," she said. "I never meant—" The officer stopped her. "Ma'am," he said, "we'll need you to come with us." Rebecca reached for me then. "Emily," she said, "tell them." The badge woman stepped forward. "That won't be necessary," she said. "We're opening a case." The hallway emptied in stages. Rebecca followed the officers out. Mrs. Johnson stayed where she was, hands clasped, eyes on the floor. "I'm sorry," she said to me. "I didn't know how long to wait." "That's okay," I answered, though no one had asked for forgiveness. A social worker introduced herself next. Her voice was practiced and careful. She explained the process, the plan for the night, where I'd be going. "Just for now," she said, "until things are sorted." Outside, the CPS car idled at the curb. Mrs. Johnson lifted a hand in a small wave. I stepped forward, 1 foot inside, and turned back as the door behind us closed. Dinner came on a real plate that night, not paper, not plastic. Meat, vegetables, bread, and a glass of milk that didn't have someone counting how many sips were left. The foster mom, Karen, set it down and told me to eat as much as I wanted. She said it once, like a rule, not an offer. No one asked what I preferred. No one asked permission. The plate stayed full until it wasn't. Afterward, the social worker explained things from the doorway: where I'd be sleeping, when school would call, when visits might happen. Rebecca's name came up only in the third person, wrapped in phrases like "under review" and "pending." Questions about her went unanswered, not ignored, just redirected. "That's not something we decide today," the social worker said. "We'll keep you informed." Informed sounded like something adults told children when they meant wait. The room had a bed, a dresser, and a lamp already plugged in. My backpack sat by the door. The notebook and calendar were gone. Someone had kept them, filed them, decided they belonged somewhere else now. For the first time since Rebecca left, there was food without a plan attached to it. No counting days, no saving half for later. That should have felt like relief. Instead, it left space for things I hadn't had time to think about. The signs lined up easily once there was nothing else to do. The empty calendar. The way she'd said, "Don't tell anyone," like advice, not a warning. The $2 placed carefully on the table. Exact. Final. None of it had been rushed. None of it had surprised her. Rebecca kept talking while the adults listened. During visits at the office, she wore the same expression she'd practiced on the phone. Tired. Misunderstood. "I needed a break," she said to the woman with the badge. I trusted her. She's mature. "She's 11, the woman replied. Rebecca nodded like that proved her point. Exactly. Lawyers asked questions that sounded polite but weren't. Rebecca answered without hesitation. She described stress, work, pressure, a child who exaggerated, a neighbor who interfered. "I never abandoned her," she said. "I was coming back." Marlene visited once, sitting across from me with her hands folded tight. The room smelled like cleaner and something sweet she'd brought but wasn't allowed to give me yet. "I keep thinking," she said, "there might be more." "More what?" "More proof," she answered. "I had another setup behind the garage. Different angle." I didn't mention it because no one asked. The social worker's head lifted at that. "Can you access it?" Marlene nodded. "It keeps everything." That was the moment things shifted. Not loudly, not in a way anyone announced, just a slight change in posture, like adults realizing a piece had been overlooked. The visits ended early that day. Rebecca left first, heels clicking fast down the hall. She didn't look back. Back at the foster house, paperwork waited on the kitchen table. Karen stayed nearby but didn't hover. The social worker explained what the forms allowed: access, collection, review. "This could take time," she said, "and it may complicate things." I picked up the pen and hesitated. Up to then, silence had felt safer, staying small, letting adults fill in the blanks with whatever version made them comfortable. That approach had kept me fed for a few days. It hadn't kept me protected. The paper didn't ask how I felt. It asked for a signature. Marlena's voice stayed calm across the table. "You don't have to convince anyone," she said. "You just have to let them see what's already there." The pen scratched louder than expected when it touched the page. My name looked uneven at the end, but it was legible. The social worker gathered the papers and slid them into her folder. "All right," she said. "We'll move forward." Karen cleared the table, stacking plates, humming under her breath. Normal sounds, normal movements. Outside, a car passed, then another. The next meeting happened in a room that smelled like copier toner and old carpet. Chairs lined one wall. A long table cut the space in half. Everyone arrived with folders, which seemed to matter more than who was sitting where. Rebecca came in smiling, already talking. "I'm glad we can clear this up," she said. "This has gotten out of hand." Her lawyer set a stack of papers down and slid one forward. "We've reviewed the financial records," he said. "They show planning, yes, but not intent to abandon." The word planning hung there. A woman from CPS opened her folder and started listing dates, transfers, reservations, charges that predated the trip by months. The timeline didn't rush. It didn't need to. Rebecca leaned back in her chair. "I budget," she said. "That's not a crime." Another page turned. "Most of the cash was withdrawn before departure," the CPS worker continued, leaving $2 in the home. Rebecca shrugged. She had food and neighbors. The lawyer cleared his throat. "Children exaggerate scarcity," he said. "It's well documented." Marlene sat behind me, hands folded tight. When the CPS worker mentioned conversations Rebecca had with friends, her head lifted. Several people recall her asking about leaving a child alone for an extended period, the worker said. She was advised against it. Rebecca's smile tightened. "People gossip," she replied. "I vented. That's not preparation." Her lawyer leaned forward again. "We'd like to address the notebook," he said. "Those entries are imaginative. They reflect fear, not fact." The notebook wasn't on the table anymore. It had been copied, scanned, labeled. Still, hearing it dismissed felt different than losing it. A relative spoke next, my aunt. She hadn't visited once. "She told me it was 2 weeks," my aunt said. "A work trip. Emily misunderstood." Rebecca nodded quickly. "Thank you." No one asked why that story hadn't come up earlier. The CPS supervisor scribbled something and whispered to another worker. Rebecca watched them closely, hands clasped now instead of folded. After a short break, the decision came out in pieces. "Given the conflicting accounts," the supervisor said, "we're granting conditional supervision." Rebecca exhaled, slow and loud. "Visitation will resume," the supervisor continued. "Monitored, limited, temporary." Rebecca turned toward me. "See," she said softly, "I told you we'd sort this out." Sorted didn't feel like the right word. Neither did temporary. The first supervised visit took place in a room with toys that looked unused. Rebecca hugged me too tightly, then stepped back when the worker cleared her throat. "I missed you," she said. "I was worried sick." "I was here," I replied. She ignored that. "I never meant to scare you," she continued. "You know that." The worker wrote something down. Rebecca talked the entire time, about stress, about work, about how hard it was to be judged by strangers. She never asked about school or the foster house. When the visit ended, she kissed my forehead and said, "We'll be home soon." The word home landed wrong. Later that week, the social worker explained the ruling again, carefully, slowly. "This doesn't mean the case is closed," she said. "It means we're still evaluating." Evaluating sounded like waiting. Back at the foster house, Karen set a glass of water down and asked how it went. "Okay," I said. She didn't push. The paperwork kept coming. Forms, updates, schedules. Everything moved forward and sideways at the same time. Marlene called that evening. "I'm sorry," she said. "I didn't think she'd get this much ground back." "She didn't win," I answered. "No," Marlene agreed, "but she didn't lose." The next hearing date was circled in red on a calendar that wasn't mine. 2 weeks out. the same number my aunt had used. 2. Rebecca sent a message later that night. "We'll get through this," it read. "Together." I didn't reply. At the next visit, she brought photos, printed ones, smiling shots from the trip. She spread them on the table like proof of something. "See," she said, "I wasn't doing anything wrong." The worker glanced at the pictures, then back at her notes. "Time's up," she said. Rebecca gathered the photos quickly. "This isn't fair," she muttered. "You're treating me like a criminal." The worker didn't answer. Outside, Rebecca leaned close before getting into her car. "You don't need to keep pushing," she said. "This is enough." The hearing reopened on a Tuesday. Same building, different room. The chairs were arranged tighter, like the space had learned what kind of day this would be. Folders lined the table again, thicker than before. Rebecca arrived late. Her lawyer followed, calm, confident, already adjusting his tie. The judge looked down at the file. "We're resuming with additional evidence," she said. "Proceed." The CPS attorney stood first. "We'll begin with departure records." A screen lit up. The image showed Rebecca on the porch, suitcase in hand, checking her phone while a car waited at the curb. Her lawyer didn't hesitate. "That proves nothing beyond an overnight absence," he said. "Parents leave luggage for short trips all the time." The judge nodded once. "Continue." The next file opened without commentary. A different view. Same morning, same suitcase. A second angle catching the car pulling away, time-stamped minutes later. The attorney spoke evenly. "This is the auxiliary device located behind the garage." Rebecca's mouth tightened. Her lawyer leaned forward. "We object. This footage wasn't previously disclosed." "It was," the attorney replied. "It wasn't requested." The judge glanced down at her notes. "Overruled." The screen changed again. Bank statements followed. Dates highlighted. Withdrawals marked in sequence. "Cash withdrawals totaling nearly the full account balance," the attorney said, "completed before departure." Rebecca shook her head. "I budget," she said. "I already explained that." The attorney didn't respond. Another document slid forward. "This is the notebook," she said. "Entries logged daily. Dates match transaction records and video timestamps." Rebecca's lawyer stood. "We maintain those writings are imaginative." The judge raised a hand. "I'm capable of reading." She picked up a printed page and scanned it. Her finger paused on one line. Then she reached for another document. "This email," the judge said, "sent by Ms. Carter prior to departure." She adjusted her glasses and read aloud. Subject line, "Back in a month." The room shifted. Rebecca opened her mouth, then closed it. The judge continued, voice flat. "The body references housing arrangements, finances, and expectations upon return." Rebecca's lawyer sat back down. The CPS attorney finished without raising her voice. "These materials establish planning, duration, and awareness. This was not an emergency. This was a decision." The judge folded her hands. "Ms. Carter," she said, "do you wish to respond?" Rebecca stood. "I love my daughter," she said. "I made a mistake." The judge waited. Rebecca swallowed. "I didn't think it would go this far." "That's correct," the judge replied. "You didn't." She looked back to the file. "Parental rights are based on responsibility, not intention," the judge said. "This court finds that responsibility was knowingly abandoned." The words landed quietly. "I am ordering immediate termination of custodial rights," the judge continued. "Effective today." Rebecca's chair scraped as she stepped back. "No," she said, "you can't." The judge didn't look up. "Arrangements will proceed through CPS," she said. "This hearing is concluded." The gavel struck once. Rebecca turned toward me. "Emily," she said, "say something." The bailiff stepped forward. "This way," he said. Rebecca hesitated, then followed him toward the side door. Her lawyer gathered his papers slowly, avoiding eye contact. Marlene reached for my hand without speaking. The room emptied in layers. CPS staff spoke in low voices, already moving on. Papers were stacked, chairs pushed back. The judge stood and left through her door. The CPS attorney approached next. "We'll finalize placement," she said. "Thank you for your cooperation." Cooperation sounded like effort. All that had happened was that the record had finally been complete. Rebecca's voice echoed faintly from the hallway, arguing with someone who wasn't answering. A clerk passed by carrying the file, now thicker than when the morning started. Marlene squeezed my hand once, then let go. "Come on," she said. "Let's get some air." The courthouse cleared out through the front doors, but Rebecca didn't. She was guided down a side hallway, past offices with closed blinds. By the time Marlene and I stepped outside, her car was already gone. People still noticed. Word traveled faster than paperwork in that neighborhood. By the end of the week, everyone knew why CPS had stepped in, even if no one said her name out loud. A voicemail came that night. "Emily," Rebecca said, "let's talk later. Just us." The message stayed unopened. The next few weeks moved quietly, but not slowly. CPS schedules filled the fridge. School forms were updated. Marlena's house stopped feeling temporary without anyone announcing the change. Dinner kept happening at the same time every night. Homework got checked. Laundry appeared folded on my bed. Rebecca tried again once, sending a short email. "I don't hate you. I hope you know that." There wasn't an answer to send back. Not because the words were wrong, but because replying would have reopened something that had already been closed by people who knew how to do that properly. The social worker explained the next steps over coffee at Marlena's kitchen table. She spoke the way professionals do when they've said the same thing many times. "Adoption is permanent," she said. "It means a clean break." Marlena nodded. "That's the point." The paperwork took longer than the decision. Forms were signed, copies were made, a date was circled and uncircled twice before settling. Through it all, Rebecca stayed absent in a way that felt final. On a Tuesday morning, Marlene and I sat in another office, smaller than the courtroom, warmer. The clerk slid the last document across the desk. "Sign here," she said. Marlene took the pen first. Her signature came out steady. Mine followed, letters taller than before. "That's it," the clerk said. "Congratulations." The word didn't land heavily. It didn't need to. An email arrived before we made it back to the car. Subject, case closed. Marlene snorted. "Guess that's that." There was one more thing to do. The old house stood exactly where it always had. The lawn had grown uneven. Mail piled up behind the door. A CPS worker waited by the porch, clipboard tucked under her arm. "Take your time," she said. The key turned once. The door opened without resistance. Nothing inside had changed. The table still bore a faint mark where the $2 had sat. The calendar was gone, but the nail remained. The fridge held nothing. The air felt stale, unused. The CPS worker stayed by the door while I walked through. No need to linger. No need to collect anything. What mattered had already been taken. At the end, the keys rested heavy in my palm. I held them out. "Thank you," the worker said, taking them carefully. She locked the door and tried it once to be sure. Marlene stood a few steps back, hands in her pockets, waiting without rushing. We walked away together. The house stayed behind us, closed and quiet, doing nothing at all as the street carried on.